All right, folks, we have the Perry family here on the podcast. Welcome, guys. How we doing?
Good.
Doing
Excited to
well.
be
Yeah,
here.
excited to be here. How are you?
Doing good. Richard, let's start with this, man. I heard when you first tried to get involved with wrestling, you told your coach that you were going to be NFL player, man. You had no interest.
Yeah,
Tell me
so
about your entry.
so in high school, my freshman year football coach was also the wrestling coach. And he coached me through freshman year football, and he was like, "You should try wrestling. It really help your football and really develop you for football. And I think you're really good for you." And I was like, "No, it's okay. I'm going to NFL. I don't need wrestling." Kind of just brushed him off, but thankfully, Coach Fawn was very persistent. I mean, every time I saw him, he would ask me, "Let's try wrestling. You'd be really good at it. It would really help you." And every time I saw him, he would ask me, I'd just be like, "No, no, thank you. I'm okay," and kind of brush him off. But he was very persistent and never let up on me. And it was sophomore year. I made a bet with him. I made a deal with him. If you stop asking me to join the wrestling team, then I'll try as a junior. And he's like, okay, and we shook on it. And after that, every time I saw him, I thought he was gonna bring it up. He never brought it up. Like, okay, maybe he got the idea. I don't want to wrestle. But and again, the whole sophomore year, every time I saw him, I thought he was gonna bring it up. He never brought it up. And junior year rolls around and the football season starts happening, and we get to that open mat time of the year, like middle of November, and he was like, "All right, Rich, we're having open mats coming up in a week. I'm gonna see you there, right?" And I'm like confused, like, "What are you talking about?" And he reminded me of our deal. I was like, "Remember what you said last year? If I stop asking about wrestling, you'd come out as a junior. Junior year is here, so I'll see you there, right?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna hold up the end of my deal, and I'll be there." And when I got there, a lot of my teammates were already there, and so it was like a lot of guys I knew were doing it. So that made it like feel like, okay, let me try this out. And I tried it, and I fell in love with it.
And it's crazy to think about if you wouldn't have listened to him and gone out for wrestling. Like, man, what a different journey, you
I
know?
know, totally different journey. Like, who knows where I would be at right now,
Right.
And I
Man.
feel like that's kind of wrestling. I started late, which a lot of people don't start as a junior in high school and have a lot of success.
Hmm.
Which I feel like starting late really forced me to like buy in right away, like really focus on training hard and doing everything I can to put myself in a position to win. Because that first year, I took fourth at states in Connecticut, and I wasn't happy with that. So that following summer, I went to a training camp in Edinburgh, and I was trying to do more to be better, and um, ended up doing well at the training camp. And I think just Coach Fong saw I was being very intentional about what I was doing that summer, and was like, you
Hmm.
know what, I'm gonna make you our captain next year because you're showing you want to be a leader, and you're showing you putting the time in before the season. So he made me a captain that year and ended up winning a state title my senior year.
That's
Um,
crazy. You know what that does to the rest of us who have wrestled since kindergarten when we hear something like that? You
well,
just walk out the room, you're done with it at that point.
I feel like for me, I would like wrestle guys at the beginning of the season, and they would like I'd beat them or they would beat me and be very close. But come towards the end of the season, I'm like kicking their butts. I'm beating them pretty easily. But I feel like starting so late allowed my trajectory of improvement to like be very,
Fast track.
very,
Yeah.
very, very fast tracked. And I can improve a lot quicker. And someone who's wrestling since they were 5 years old, they have these long-term ingrained habits. Where
Yep.
I'm a fresh canvas. You're teaching me. I'm learning it for the first time. I'm not like I don't have to unlearn anything. I'm just learning straight up, which I think that helped me a lot. And I understood that, so I was like understanding. Okay, they're beating me now, but I continue to work and I get better, and I'll get them in the end of the year, and that's what would happen. And like
Yeah.
guys are like confused, like I beat this guy earlier in the year. Like how is it? Am I losing to him now? And I'm like, that's how it
How
goes.
how it
Yeah,
goes. Now when
For
you got
them.
yeah.
yeah, for them. Now when you got to Bloomsburg, you were fully bought in at this point. And I had heard you said in a past podcast, the Wrestling Philly podcast, actually, that at Bloomsburg, you guys were wrestling all year round. It's like, what was it like your first 6 months kind of getting situated and acclimated to that world?
So after my senior year, I didn't get any of the offers for wrestling or for football that I thought I deserved because my grades weren't the best. I didn't take academics really seriously until I was a junior because of wrestling. So wrestling, like, it changed a lot of my mentality, not just on the mat, but in the classroom. And thankfully I changed it as a junior, where I was able to pivot, and I didn't get the offers that thought I deserved. So I went to a post grad school, did a year post grad at High in Woodstock in Connecticut, which gave me another year to wrestle for high school. I was like a second senior year. I wrestled for high school, second senior year, and I won states again. I took third at prep nationals. I lost to Joe McMullen in the semifinals. And I tell the story, I shot a high cross with Joe McMullen, and he like sat the corner. I'm like, what is he doing? Like, where is he going? He's like scooting, and he gets to 2 points. I'm like, what just happened? Like, being from Connecticut, like no one ever sat the corner on me. So I was like confused and like didn't know what was going on. And wrestling Connecticut's come a long way, which is doing really well now. But like back then, it was like sitting in the corner wasn't the thing at 215. You know, like guys didn't sit in the corner and scoot to get the 2 points. So took third at prep nationals, and then that year I was contacting all these schools to like, you know, give them my highlight tape I made, and you know, show them interest. And there's a school in Connecticut called Sacred Heart. That's the only Division I school in Connecticut, and I sent them my tape and emailed them, and I called them, and I went on a campus tour, and they were never available. They never contacted me back, so it made me really salty. So I looked at their schedule last year, and I saw who they wrestled, and I looked for the team that beat them the worst, and it was Bloomsburg. So I emailed Bloomsburg an interest form, like I'm interested in the school, and 15 minutes later I get a call back from Coach Stutzman. What's up, big dog? It's Coach Stutzman. How you doing? We're here at Bloomsburg University, and we got your form. We were interested in contacting you. We'd love to get you down here on a visit. And we started talking. And I went down there on a visit. I fell in love with just the community, the culture, their grinding. They bought into like we work hard here. We don't cut corners. We're here to work hard, and that's what separates us from the path. Yeah.
Wow, it's awesome to hear that. I love the snubbing by Seton Hall and getting you fired up to Bloomsburg.
Yeah, Sacred Heart. Yeah.
Sacred Heart, not Seton Hall. Sorry, Sacred Heart. Yeah,
that's all good.
I was researching it. I was looking at my notes this morning. I'm like, Seton Hall is wrestling. I'm like, but must have wrote that down wrong. So once you make this incredible progression from you starting late, 4-year Division I wrestler, 5 you consider the red shirt, then you really kind of have your breakout at the Bill Farrell when you cut down to 86 in 2014, I think it was. Did you always know you were going to wrestle freestyle after college?
So again, like you said before, we wrestled all year round. So after nationals, it's like what's next in wrestling, which is freestyle season. So to give our guys something to focus on, we wrestled freestyle in college. And again, I wrestled at 97 kilos because cut down to, I think it was 85 or what it was before 86 or 84. Just didn't make sense as a 197 pounder. Cut down to 180, 85. Just kind of doesn't make sense for your, what you're focusing on, which is like college season. So I bumped up to 197 or 97 kilos, and which is like 215. I was always undersized. Never felt like I could really break through because guys like J.D. Berman and Dustin Kilgore, those guys are huge. Like they're huge people that like move around, and like trying to beat those guys like undersized is like a tall task. So after my senior year, I decided that I wasn't done wrestling. Me and my wife, we talked about it. I was like, I didn't accomplish things I wanted to accomplish.
You guys met in college? I was going to ask, when did you guys meet? Okay, so
we met in college. We're in the same school. Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
Go Bloomsburg.
Go Bloomsburg. Special place. We met in college, and I talked to her at the end of my senior year. I'm not happy with what I accomplished, and I want to continue wrestling. And so she was like, she was bought in. She's like, let's do this as a family, and we can do this. I believe in you, and let's get this done. So I coached for a year at American in 2015. And I wrestled also.
You were like coaching and training.
Yeah, at the same time, which was kind of what people were doing back to the RTCs were a thing.
That's the grind days, man.
The grind days, the real grind days.
But they made you.
Yeah, they made me who I am today, so I appreciate them. But for the Bill Farrell, so I wrestled the Bill Farrell, was that 2014? 2014. Ended up winning that, which was amazing. Beat some really good guys there.
Olympic silver medalist.
Olympic silver medalist from Puerto Rico.
I'll brag on him. He's really humble. So I'll highlight all the yeah.
It was a good tournament. Had a really good showcasing. I think for 86, so I cut down to 86 after 2014 because I was done, so I didn't have to like worry about college weight. So I was like, where am I going to be competitive at? And again, 86 was like, I think you can be competitive here, so let's go down. We cut down, which was really hard. I never cut weight before. Like, I'm a guy that like eats a sandwich before weigh-ins. I was always underweight. 97 was a hard cut. I had to miss one meal for 97, but
so not only did you win state after wrestling 1 year, you're also not cutting weight. You're the other guy on the team where we're like, this guy's eating all day.
yeah, that was me.
Gina, what was he like when he started cutting down? Was he surly or did he keep a good attitude?
No, so Rich was always, and he still is, he's just always just this happy-go-lucky guy, right? Like he always has this big megawatt smile on his face. That didn't change. I mean, you didn't have to cut a ton of weight. It was basically like watching what you're eating and knowing that your food fuels you.
Yeah.
So like making healthy choices.
Yeah.
He was definitely not like his roommates in college who were cutting weight before every match, and they were not the best.
No.
Not the nicest, I should say.
That sounds like it's funny the way you phrase it like that, though. That's how you sell it to someone. Like if you got to sell a weight cut to your mom in high school, it's like, Mom, I'm basically, if I just trim out this, I trim out that, I'm basically not even cutting. And then next thing you know, she's duct taping the plastics on. So
yeah.
So
I had a couple of those days too where I had to wear plastics, and I'm like, okay, this sucks. But once I made the official weight, the first weight cut, it kind of just fell off after that. Every weight cut after, it was just like easier to make.
Yeah. And I understand, like you said, you were doing the year at American where you're driving a couple hours, you're coaching, you're wrestling, just, insane long days. How does the great Roger Reyna get on your radar?
So I was coaching and training at American for a whole year, and I was commuting every day, 2.5 hours to American. I wake up at 5:45, have my bag packed the night before, brush my teeth, get dressed. I'm there by 6:15. Trying to beat all the traffic in Baltimore and DC. Get to work by 8:30. Right into a individual workout with one. I was in charge of 74, 84, 97 heavyweight. Those 4 weights were my weight. So I was working out from when I walked in the door. Get three individuals in. Then I get my workout, my practice in, and I go right into the team practice. I'm really working out the whole time I was there.
God.
Yeah, it was like a 5 hour, it was like a 6 hour workout. So
you were making up for all those missed years.
Yeah,
you know
I was,
I mean?
for sure.
Like he was catching up to those guys. That's what it was.
For sure I was. Get a lot of mat time.
Exactly.
Man.
And I would say that like got old. It came around February, and I was just like, it was hard to like do that for a long, sustainable time. And at that time, Kilgore had came to Penn to train, and I was on the scene. I did well in tournaments, and won the Bill Farrell in 2014. And so they knew I was in the area. It was Brian Dolph was a coach then, reached out to me and was like, hey, we have Dustin Kilgore now. And I wrestled Kilgore earlier when I was in college for freestyle nationals, I think University Nationals.
Okay.
That's 2 out of 3. And he beat me 2 out of 3 times. And so they kind of knew we've had some history. So they invited me over to train with him because I guess Slade was out of country coaching, and they want to get Kilgore some good training partners. So I went to Penn to train with Kilgore. And then it turned into like a recruiting trip where they were like showing me the Penn, the PRTC, and like talking about like what it's about, and how great their high hopes for it and what they hope it could be, and the support around it and the community around it, which is like really intriguing. And I was at the point where I was like, I can't commute 2.5 hours one way and continue to train, and I also can't, I'm training guys and I'm training myself. It's like, when do I let my guys, start having success against me? I can't just be beating them the whole time.
Right.
Because they need to have their confidence built up. And I felt like I was at that, like, what do I do, that crossroad? And I think God gave me this opportunity to go to PRTC and train there and see their facilities and kind of feel their culture there. Really like, let's transition, to full-time training, because again, I can coach when I'm done wrestling, but I can't wrestle forever.
Right.
So I talked to Gina, and we were like, one, it's closer. It's an hour train ride away, which cuts my commute down a lot. So it just made sense. And I'm focusing on training full time, and they're talking about giving us health insurance and as an athlete, and a lot of these things that you don't get as an athlete when you're
training full time.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's do this. Let's focus on, my career for this short period of time, because again, it's not really that long of a period of time.
You get 1 cycle, 2 cycles,
Yeah.
right?
Not all of us people like Jordan to go like 3 or 4 cycles. We all can't do that. So
I know we're living amongst like the Tom Brady, Jordan Burroughs era, and it's
I know it's crazy.
Setting that bar real high.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
once you got there, what kind of relationship did you form with Coach Reyna?
He wasn't the coach at the time. He was the executive director. So Brian Dolph was my coach, and he was a good coach. And
it was right before the Open or right before the trials, I forget.
It was 2015.
Yeah.
2015.
I think it was in April where Dolph left.
Yep, Dolph left in
and
April,
Roger had to step in.
and Roger stepped into the PRTC coach, which I'm beyond grateful for that, because
we were nervous.
Dolph was a great coach, but we were very nervous because you're having a coach switch right before the biggest tournament of the year, and we're like, what do we do? And Coach Reyna comes in, and he's really like thoughtful with how he coaches. He's really like, that's intentional. Let's get a goal sheet going. So we got a goal sheet going. Like, what's your goals? Like, where do you want to be in 1 year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And where do you want to be next month? So we did that, wrote my goals down, and how we're going to get to your goals. So we wrote a goal plan, how we're going to attain these goals, and what that's going to take every day to get to these goals accomplished. And that really helped me visualize and see, if I do this every day, I'll get there. And that really helped me, I think, as an athlete, but also as a person. The importance of goal setting is really important. And having a long-term goal and a short-term goal is very important. And having steps to get to those goals. It's one thing to have a goal with no steps, but it's if you have steps to get to those goals, you can measure it every day.
Yeah.
And that really helped me with that. And
it's crazy how many coaches don't take the time to do what you just said there. That simple process of a goal sheet and a plan. Coach Reyna he's the best, so it doesn't surprise me at all he does that. But yeah, how many times do you work with a coach and they don't sit down, just do that basic step? It's almost like a middle school level thing, but you should be doing it every level,
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Yeah, we do it now at Penn too. We have all our guys sit down, and we all, have a goal sheet, and we all go through it, and
you hold each other accountable to make sure that you're hitting those goals.
Yeah, and again, now it's not just me just thinking about it. Now it's everyone I'm training with. They know what I want to accomplish, and they can hold me accountable. They can push me, and they can see when I'm slacking or cutting corners. They can say, no, don't do that. Let's do things the right way so I can accomplish these goals. They can remind me.
Yeah,
it's what you want to accomplish. So we say, let's do the right things. Yeah, really good.
No, it's man, Coach Reyna, I've just met him over the past couple of years, and I just love that guy. He just like you said, he's so thoughtful, and he doesn't waste a word. There's never any filler words. He's just so on it, man. God, I love that guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Fantastic.
So genuine.
Yes,
yeah,
very
he's so genuine. Yeah,
anything you need, and he's fantastic, and
a servant heart. He's there to serve you and to help you any way he can. I turned to him and was like, "What's up, coach?" I was like, "How you doing?" He's like, "Better now that I see you." Every time I see him, I'm like, "Oh, that's so special."
That's awesome. And so he came back in 2017, 2018 to Penn, and he's doing awesome. And BJ Futrell, who I grew up with, he's out there right now, and just Mark Hall, the whole, as they call it, the movement. I don't want to I don't want to offend any Philly fans here. The movement is exciting, and man, it's such a community. I just love it. You got the Motter family doing their thing. You got Let's Beat the Streets. You got the RTC. You got Drexel and Penn wrestling. So it's very exciting. And we're gonna come back to some of your matches in your career. But when you're going through your movement, you wrestle at the Olympic trials. You have an epic match with Dick, which we're going to come back to because it's just action packed. And then when did you have the wrestle off for true third for the national team with Downey?
2018. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about that one. Cause I heard that was a moment where you're doing some soul searching before that match.
Oh yeah. It was a moment where, cause I was planning on, my eyes are set on Taylor. Like we're getting Taylor, we're going to get it done this time because I've had a close match with Taylor in Paris and I felt like I was able to beat him. So, I was ready for that opportunity to go wrestle him again, best 2 out of 3 at Panel X and wrestled in the World Team Trials, ended up losing to Nick Reenan from NC State, best 2 out of 3. And I got the call. I was like, they said Pat Downey wants to wrestle for true third. And at this point, I'm just like so distraught. And I'm like, I was like focusing on Taylor so much that I was just like, I might as well be done now. I was like, let's just hang up the shoes. I was so like beaten down and didn't get what I want. So I was just really upset. And
you were lost for a little bit. It was scary.
Lost.
It was the first time.
How bad, Gina? How bad?
Yeah. I mean, it was the first time where I saw him like that megawatt smile wasn't there. You mentioned wrestling to Rich and he just lights up, right? And this was the first time where you mentioned wrestling to Rich and he's like, oh, I don't know, because you could see it. He's replaying that match in his head. I should have won. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And it was a hard few weeks.
Yeah, it was
leading up to that true third match.
And I would say the few weeks leading up, I would just, I was like mentally I was done, but physically I was still going to practice. I was still like doing the things I didn't want to do. I was still showing up to practice, which I felt like helped like buy like spark a fire in me again. I was talking to Coach Slay and having a conversation with him and also my teammates and just kind of uplifting me and like, you may not get what you want, but get the next best thing, right? And it was definitely a God moment, and I would say get the next best thing was kind of
Slay's big on like losses don't define you too. Like he lives by that.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to share like that conversation you had with God where you were like, where he asked, or it was like he asked, who are you doing this for?
Yeah, so there was a time where after that match, I had a conversation with God, like, and I felt like he just asked me, like, who are you doing this for? Are you doing this for your glory or for my glory? And that was very convicting because, I'm a man of Christ and, we've walked this certain walk and I'm sitting here moaning and groaning about a loss that, and may not be that important in like 3 or 4 years, and I'm like so stuck on this loss and like God's just convicted me and like, who are you doing this for your glory or for my glory? And if you're doing it for my glory, just trust me. And that alone was just like, all right, let me keep putting my shoes on and let me just continue to go to practice. Maybe something will click. And I think I started getting some momentum in practice and I was able to kind of recover mentally and I was working out. So physically I was in really good shape and got to that true third match and left it all on the line there. Ended up winning, thankfully. Praise God. And all I can do is point to God, like, hey, thank you, Lord, for this opportunity. Like, for seeing me through this, like, not just through this win, but even before that, like, get me to this point where I was able to wrestle and give you the glory. So, yeah.
Pretty powerful. I mean, in such a short time from 16, 17 to maybe like 25, 26, like however old you were when that happened, like so much had happened just through wrestling. And like now you're like at a point where you're on the national team. Like it's like,
yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like 2016, I was Kyle Snyder's training partner. So I went to the Olympics and I saw the whole process of like what an Olympian does and how an Olympian can navigate through these waters and win Olympic medals. That like really motivated me to like give full effort in all that I do and like really buy in. 2018 was kind of like hiccup where I was like kind of beaten up. And so I've had the highs and the lows of training with the best in the world and also wrestling the best in the world. And so I've been on the top of it and the bottom of it. So I've been kind of through it all. Yeah.
You rode the roller coaster.
Yeah, I have for sure. Rode the roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, even like during those tours, like going to the Medved, what a legendary tournament and getting a couple medals there over your time. So like, man, just an awesome example of the name of this podcast, Wrestling Changed My Life. Like, you're the perfect example of that in such a short window, you know?
Yeah.
And I think what's exciting is, you know, when you had this, and I hate to even ask you about it, because I'm sure everyone you talk to asks you about the accident, but I want to talk about it only because how you handled it afterwards is like another example of the power that wrestling has, and like how it just makes people, you know, be able to handle things that are much bigger than a loss, right? Like, we recently had some family issues lately. It's like you look at that compared to like a loss for True Second on the U.S. national team when 8 million people or 8 billion people don't even know about it. It's like not even comparison, you know?
Yeah.
It's there was this famous high school coach in Illinois, Bill Wick, who used to coach legendary teams, and he told his guys, like, before they'd walk out for the state finals, he'd look at them and smile and say, "There's 7 billion people who are never going to know about this match. Like, don't worry about it." And like, it's kind of like
That's so freeing.
It's freeing. Like, when I first heard it as a kid, I was like, man, that sucks. Like, don't downplay the state finals. But now as an adult, I get it, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
It is freeing because you can go out there and, you know,
Like a
compete
fly.
without the pressure. Yeah. So 2018, you make the world team. You're at a training camp out in San Diego. What happened? And then Gina, obviously, you can fill in the gaps here. But what was the situation?
So we were doing some cross training with the military in 2018 at this national team camp, and we're doing some exercises that kind of bridge the gap of like how they feel wrestling and Marines are similar, because we're forgetful effort. We really dial in on our training, and we're doing some cross training with the Marines. And in this instance, we're doing one training where we're like hand-to-hand combat, and we have batons and showing us how we can, how you would, address a situation where if you're close proximity with a person, you can strike them with a baton. And we're doing that, and I was doing really well against everyone. And
so you got a helmet on, you got a jousting stick, and you're kind of like doing some like jabbing with the stick, basically.
Some jabbing and some slashing with the stick, and so they do like a mini tournament where you keep advancing. You're in the finals. I was in the finals, but going against one of our guys, and we're doing it, and he went to like joust at my head, and I like put my mask down, and he fake jousted at my head and like kind of jabbed at my face, and the stick went through the face mask, and broke my orbital bone, and then my bone went to my brain, caused brain damage. So I was hospital for
ever.
How long were you in the hospital in San Diego for?
So we were in San Diego for a month, like an entire month, and before we were transferred to Philadelphia. And then in Philadelphia, he was in like a regular hospital for about a week, and then he was in an outpatient facility, August, September, October, for like 2.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So like our kids, he wasn't home for, I think it ended up being almost pretty close to 4 months. And at the time we had 3 kids, one being a 5-month-old, and then and a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. So he was gone for a really long time. And when he came back, obviously he came back a lot different than when he left, because he was able to talk when he came home, but he wasn't talkative, right? Like,
so when I was in the hospital in San Diego, I had a stroke.
So the injury caused like severe brain damage. The doctors didn't think he was going to live. Like, they didn't think he was going to make it. They literally told me the moment I arrived, like, prepare yourself, because this is going to be a hard journey. And I was like, oh, okay, but we'll get through it. And then he was like, no, like, prepare yourself to tell your kids, like, dad's not coming home, and that's when I was like, oh my, like, that's not anything you ever want to hear. But he actually was completely paralyzed for weeks, and nonverbal, obviously, and in a vegetative state. So like, he would open his eyes. At some point he was opening his eyes, and he could follow you around the room, but he wasn't verbal. He wasn't there. Like there were so many times where I questioned, like, does he even know who I am?
Wow.
Yeah.
You remember
yeah,
this, Richard, or you don't remember anything from San Diego?
I remember anything from I remember like doing the sparring, and then I remember waking up in Philadelphia in outpatient therapy.
Weeks
So literally,
later.
like weeks later,
a month later.
a month later is like I'm like I see videos of myself in San Diego hospital. I'm like, I have no recollection of that, or stuff like that. I'm like, it's just crazy. Like black,
gone.
it's just gone. It's not
Now-
even like there.
Now, Gina, did you have to basically rattle some cages with these doctors to even perform the surgery? Because they weren't
Yeah.
going to do anything?
Right. So, I mean, thank God for the wrestling community, because literally every time I felt like I was losing hope, or I would doubt, like, God, like, is this really the path you have our family on? Like, I'm going to trust you, but my faith is like running dry. Someone from the wrestling community would be like, keep fighting, right? Keep that faith. My family went through this and God showed up this way. So he's going to show up for you. And he really did. We actually, I've never been so bold. I think Rich is always, the one to stand up for our family and in a kind way. Like he would always be like, Gina, like God's got us, just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't able to say that. He wasn't able to like be the support system I needed. There was a few points, like this happened several occasions throughout that month-long journey, where doctors would tell me to get a grip, that he's not coming back. And then one time I was in the hospital room with Jose Campo from FCA in California, and Stephen Neal, who Rich met literally 2 days before his injury. And they were so helpful, but they were in the room with me, and a doctor came in and said, okay, well, we're not going to perform surgery. And I just looked at the doctor and was like, what do you mean you're not going to perform surgery? And he was like, this is the rest of his life. And he was, at that point, he was laying in a hospital bed, unable to move, not responsive, like couldn't say a single word. And I was like, absolutely not. And he said, the risks are too great. We can't risk brain surgery. And, it's much better off if we just leave it like this. And I, yeah. Right.
What?
Like, yes. Bedside manner was not at the top of their list.
Oh
but
my God.
Yeah. So I mean, immediately I called Tina Slay, Brandon Slay's wife in Philadelphia, and I was a hot mess, right? Like I was bawling to her, like, this can't be happening. Like we have to do something. What can we do? Next thing I know, a few hours pass by, and someone calls me and says, you have a meeting with the CMO of the hospital. And I was like, I don't even know what a CMO is. So I'm like Googling, trying to figure out, okay, well, what is this guy going to do for me? Right. Like I need my husband to get better. And so the next day we go into a meeting, and he said he looked over some things, and they may have overlooked something. So we can try to have the surgery. We're going to have the surgery, and we'll see what happens from there. And that's all I needed to hear. Right.
Yeah.
Because at that point, like there's a chance that things will get better. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely had to, tell some doctors I know who my God is.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to stay focused on him and his promises, and he'll get me through this. Yeah.
And you have kids at home, because were you in San Diego for the camp to begin with, or did you fly out only after the fact?
No. So it's funny, because a lot of the wives were actually going. They went that week before Rich's injury, and spending time there with their husbands. And I was so sad that I couldn't do that. But we had just had Zeke, who was 5 months old at the time. And now I'm thinking back, and I'm like, thank God I didn't, because that would have been an extra week that I was away from our kids. Maya and Bo were 6 and 2 at the time, right? 6 and 2. And yeah, I was away from them for an entire month. And it was, that was just as hard as going through everything with him, like being by his side, because it's like, at one point I need to be a mother, but at the other time, like every time I'm saying, okay, can I go see my kids for the weekend, the doctors are telling me you can't leave because he could still pass away at any moment.
And it just makes you think, like, people who don't have that kind of advocacy, like how many times do like medical professionals not go the full mile because they don't have that advocacy, someone demanding to have a surgery. So you have the surgery, and that's the kind of the beginning of your recovery, basically, right? Like everything starts from there. Gina, tell me about Joe Russell, because I've never had him on the podcast, and people are just awestruck that I haven't, because he's amazing and he's such a big wrestling, influence, and he had an injury in his own right. I've had his brother on, but tell me about Joe and some of the conversations you guys had.
That's so funny. We were just talking about Joe last night.
Yeah, we were.
Okay, so one, if you've never met the man, you need to like make it a point to hunt him down at the Open or some tournament.
Get him on here.
Yeah,
Yes,
get him on the podcast. He's a guy you got to talk to.
He's incredible. So I've heard stories about Joe Russell, like leading up to this moment, right? Because every tour Rich goes on with Team USA or it's Joe Russell's there basically. And so Rich comes back and he tells me all these great stories about this guy, Joe Russell. And I met him once in Colorado at the Dave Schultz. And so I'm sitting in the waiting room. Rich is back getting like MRIs or CAT scans or something. And Joe Russell comes and he sits down next to me in the waiting room. And he says, I have to tell you something. He goes, I know what you're going through is really difficult. He goes, but I don't know how I ended up where I am today. And I had no idea what he meant because I didn't know like his full backstory, right? Like how he became like the assistant coach for Team USA. And he was like, but now I know God put me here for this purpose. So then I'm like dialed in. And he explains that when he was in high school, he was in a motorcycle accident and he literally, his brain was on the floor, like on the floor. And I know that's graphic, but that's to me, like, yeah, I mean, it's as close as you're going to get to what Rich endured with his injury. And then to see him sitting there, talking, holding a conversation. And then I have my husband who's completely, in this comatose state. And the doctors are saying he's never coming back. And then I have Joe Russell there telling me that that's what the doctor said to his family. And, and explaining like, Rich hears you, even if he doesn't make a motion or if he doesn't acknowledge you, he still hears you. Like, I heard my brother, I heard the doctors. He walked me through what was going to happen, what Rich was experiencing, at least from his, like, in relation to what he experienced during his recovery. So the stories were just so similar. And what Joe Russell did that day, I smile just thinking about it, like did in that moment, sharing his testimony and how God worked through him and how despite what medical science can do, God can do so much more. And he just poured that into me. And every step along the way, I mean, every time something happened to Rich, I was texting Joe and he would tell me exactly what was going to happen next. Right. So I wasn't blindsided. It was so powerful and so impactful. And it really gave me the hope I needed to cling to.
Powerful. Now, Dan Russell, his brother's been on the podcast. And I mean, and Joe, was like one of the top high school recruits in the country when this happened. And him and Dan were best friends. And so I mean, and Dan Russell was kind of like you for Rich, it sounds like his brother was like going in there all the time and like communicating. And it's just a powerful story to hear that. And so you get back to Philly, you're in the outpatient. Basically there, it's like, are they telling you you'll never walk again, Rich? Or like, what's the status there?
They're telling me that I may never walk again, and we're going to try to, help you rehab as much as we can, and give you physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy.
All
day, pretty much. So
training
first
camp.
off, for sure. Yeah. So first off, I like wake up, like kind of like in a fog, out of a dream, and I'm like, where am I? I'm like in this place I've never seen before, and this doctor comes in and he's like talking to me, and he's like telling me, you're in Philadelphia, you're at an outpatient center now, and you sustained these very you went through a tragic injury. And I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm like confused, and I look in the mirror and I see I had this big scar on my head, and it's all staples. And then like kind of just sinks in, like, this is really happening. I don't know what's happened, but this is real. Like what he's saying is real. And then I think you came in, and
so you didn't even know, like you're taking all this in, and like at this time, like, are you like, could you sit up and walk if you wanted to, or you weren't even close to that?
No, I couldn't really move my whole left side. So I was paralyzed on my left side. Couldn't move my left arm, couldn't move my left leg, and I couldn't speak.
Well, at that time, when that happened, you were still completely paralyzed. Like that's when, I mean, you were just getting physical therapy to start moving your right side, but you were still completely paralyzed.
Yeah.
And for people who are listening and don't, haven't seen this, you're fully functional. You're you're walking, you're talking. I saw the rehab videos of you skipping down the hallway in the Bloomsburg sweats. Like, man, I love when to hear people like this, because like these people at this outpatient facility, they're probably used to the run of the mill person who just takes what they say.
For
A
sure.
wrestler comes through there and they're like, I don't even know
It's
what to
different.
believe with this guy. It's like, is this guy for real? And then sure enough, like you're making rapid progress, and you're so you're in the bed, the doctor's telling you this. Like, do you like ever think like you're sad, like this sucks? Like, what are you thinking as you're hearing this?
I think I definitely thought all those emotions, they were like kind of sped out. I was like, this sucks. What's gonna happen? Like, I may never wrestle again. And my biggest thing is like my family. I may never like be able to run with my kids again, or, you know, do stuff like that. And that's just really was like hurting me. And I made a decision to like throw all of those negative thoughts away and like focus on what I can do. So again, back to that true third, focus on the next best thing, right? Like, what can I control? And I can control my effort. I can control what am I doing to get better. My attitude, like Gina was saying, like I would never, I try to always be positive. So I'm not going to change that now. Like, this is the perfect time to be positive. It's like, buy into, try to recover as much as I can. What can I control? I can control this. Okay, I'm going to give full effort 100% of the time and see where God takes it from there. And I was doing that. I would like show up to therapies, like ready to go. I was trying to do more and over the top and give a full effort in everything I did. And I set a goal. The goal was to walk out of that therapy place unassisted, no canes, no wheelchairs. And that was my goal right from when I started therapy, was to walk out of there unassisted. And 2.5 months later, I was able to do that. So, yeah.
Let's go. Let's go. Now, tell me you went to the therapy with the sweatpants tucked into the socks.
Well, I did it because I don't think I had anyone tuck my sweatpants in my socks. So it wasn't. I didn't do that. No.
Yeah, that was my fault. Like, Rich I should have told the nurses, right?
Yeah.
Man, your teammates were there enough. Like, someone should have taken that upon themselves to make sure you were.
Again, it's also the wrestling community, because when there were days when Gina was there like every day, but when she wasn't there, I was having some of my teammates would come and visit. Some of the Beat the Streets Philly kids were there to visit, and
that was Roger Reyna.
Yeah.
Like, Roger, from the moment we arrived in Philadelphia, Roger met me in the hospital, and so did BJ and Beza Futrell. Like, literally, it was 11 o'clock at night, and that's who showed up at the bedside to So we were never alone.
Yeah.
Brandon came to make sure when we flew from California to Philadelphia that we weren't alone. Brandon Slay. His wife Tina came out prior to that, like during the first few days, to help me find somewhere to stay. Like, the wrestling community has just been so amazing. But the coolest thing, I think, Roger Reyna organized this sheet of all the Drexel, Penn, and PRTC, and then Beat the Streets Philly. They would take turns coming in. So Rich was like never alone, which is very important in recovery, because one time friends from Bloomsburg were visiting, and one of the wives, she messaged me and she goes, Gina, how often do you go visit Rich? And I said, I go every day.
Every day.
Except for once a week, because we live an hour and a half, and then with the kids, it was hard. So I would like miss once a week. Rich told her that I was visiting like once a week. So for him, like, missing that one day, being alone that one day was like forever in time. It like seemed like forever. So it was really important. It meant a ton that Roger made sure that there was always someone in there with him, which was cool to see, because then they would send me videos of him when I couldn't be there.
Yeah.
And they would send videos of like all the guys, like the Penn and Drexel guys, encouraging Rich to like one more rep, like one more step.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was like hard to get down. It was hard to be like to soak when you have everyone cheering you on, everyone's in your corner behind your back, and you can do it.
Yeah.
Never really had a chance to do that, which I think was paramount to my recovery. Like, really fast tracked it.
Yeah. It's cool because a lot of people don't have that when they're going through recovery. Like, a lot of people are alone out there. Like, imagine how much harder it'd be for that. And like, you got the whole wrestling community behind you. What was it like the first time you went back and went to a practice and coached a wrestling practice?
It was a newfound appreciation for it. Definitely. I was just like really emotional. I'm like really like, remember, so I returned around the same time as the
Keystone
Classic, which is like in November, and I was like introduced to the Keystone Classic, so that was like really touching too. Like I walked on the mat, waved to everybody, and they were telling people my story and stuff. It was really honoring. It was really awesome to have that opportunity to be that done for me. But to be at practice, like see practice again, it was just like really breathtaking. It was really amazing to be there again. And I still feel amazed to be there today. Like to have this opportunity, like to be where I was at, to be where I am now, it's just like amazing. Yeah.
And the first place we went, so we left the inpatient facility and we drove right to Penn.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, right to it was like a welcome home party.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had like a welcome home party at Penn for me, and we hung out with a bunch of my friends, a bunch of my teammates and their families, and
it was beautiful.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Wow. And I remember Rich was like, when he came home from his first practice, he was like, I was like, what was different? It's really fast.
Yeah, it felt so fast because like being out of it for that long with also the brain damage, it's like everything's so much faster. And even like being back home with the kids, like it was an adjustment because you have 3 kids, all under 7 years old. It's just like they're moving like it's just like chaos, but it's just like
you
gotta get with it. You gotta catch up the speed,
pick up the pace.
I'll get left behind. I was not trying to get left behind, so I had to pick up my speed.
Well, when I hear you mention speed, I can't help but think to that dig match we were talking about earlier. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is that I've heard that during your recovery, you will go back and watch that match. And for people who don't know what we're talking about, in the quarters 2016, Richard and Dake scrapped to the wire. Richard, you were winning most of that match, and you talk about explosion, man. When you first of all at the beginning, you guys were scrapping with some clubs,
yeah.
And
same couple of clubs,
dude. You are so lightning fast on some of those reattacks, and then the transition to the gut the one time was so fast. I mean, how did watching that match motivate you? After the fact,
just like to remember where you were at. Like where did you come from? Like in that match, I think is very important because Kyle Dake, he's 4-time now world medalist, world champion. Being able to see that and like having that success against him, even though I didn't win the match, like having that pocket of success of like, I was winning in the match and being able to score on him, to show me like, I was on track to being, pretty darn good. So
and not only that though, but like that's something that no one expected from you, right?
Yeah.
So to then have these doctors who are saying like he's not going to recover, and then for you to like see that match and be reminded like, wait a minute, no one thought I could do this, but I did it, right?
Yeah.
Like I
that's a great point.
I mean, I may be biased. I think Rich won that match.
It's a very. I encourage people to rewatch it because, man, you were winning most of the match up until the last 20 seconds or so. But to your point, Gina, if you would have said your senior year at Bloomsburg, hey, in 4 years or 3 years, you're going to be toe to toe with the great Kyle Dake, people might have thought you were a little loopy in the head.
For sure.
They would have been like, same thing, But sure enough, man, here you were. And I mean, it wasn't a fluke. Like you were on the mix from 14 all the way through 18, and you only had 2 of maybe the best wrestlers of all time ahead of you. Kyle Dake and David Taylor. Like you see now that they're out of JB shadow, they're on their own.
Now they're flourishing.
They're 4-time world champs themselves. It's like, geez, crazy. So I just love hearing about it, and it's an inspirational story. And I remember hearing about it when it happened, but it's so great to chat with you guys now about it. And Gina,
another point to that is,
go ahead, sir.
I would say another point to that is in that match, there was an exchange where there was blood time, which it was pretty long. It was like a minute of blood time, which allowed me to like kind of soak in like what was going on. I saw I was winning, and I saw there's a minute and a half left, and it kind of changed how I was wrestling. So I think I would also change how I wrestled. I stopped being offensive. I was more defensive. Let me hold him out. So Kyle Dake, you never want to just try to hold Kyle Dake out. He's going to pin his ears back and come with 100 attacks. And I would say, I think it's kind of how it was my recovery is like, finish strong. Don't just hold out. Give everything you have, full effort. the whole time, and that's kind of how the recovery is, finishing strong all the way through everything I did.
I didn't catch that part. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's it's funny how that happens sometimes, right? You even now as a coach, I'm sure you watch it. Like you watch a match from afar, and a guy dominates the first 5 minutes, and he puts the brakes on and loses in the last 2 seconds. Like it happens.
Yeah,
You
and I
know, it's
remember like going back to the center because like I was wrestling, and I remember the moment I started to like kind of get heavy in my stance and like go one leg straight back and like just like be defensive. He's like, I think Kyle could smell the blood in the water like a shark. You know, he was like, okay, I'm gonna get this guy now.
yeah.
And that's kind of just happened, kind of just tipped away at me, and I was just like, now where I want to be at.
Well, it's an amazing match, and the wrestling itself, like if you remove the refs, the wrestling itself is amazing. If you watch the refs, you scratch your head at some of the points they're throwing up at different times. And luckily, you got Coach Rainey in the corner ready to attack some people if things got out
Oh
of
yeah,
control.
throw the brick.
Yeah. But through this whole thing, Gina, maybe you were way into wrestling before this, but you're definitely way into it now. And you write for Intermat. You're working for Beat the Streets, for God's sakes, one of my favorite organizations. And I was talking to Ben Ryder yesterday, and he mentioned you're spearheading an awesome campaign called Gear Up. So I just wanted to see, what's that all about and what's going down with that this year.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be a part of Beat the Streets National. It was an organization that Rich and the PRTC really allowed me to see like firsthand these youth and these kids and how wrestling could really change their lives. Now I knew how wrestling changed Rich's life, injury aside, growing up in a single parent home, coming from a low income, under resourced community, and how his coach saw the potential in him and wanted to bring that out. And that's what our coaches at Beat the Streets do. They want to find these kids, tap into their potential, and make them realize that like there's potential there, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can do more than all these limiting thoughts and doubts and fears around you. So yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of this. Right now, we're currently running the Gear Up campaign. I don't know if you're heavy on Twitter, but things are heating up. We have a bunch of teams who, there's some wrestling wives. You have some podcasters, just wrestling advocates who are really stepping up, and they're branching out and asking their friends and family to help us raise $100,000 by December 1st to help gear up 2,000 Beat the Streets youth across the nation. And that's all thanks to like our sponsors, ASICS, Reslite, Gear to Compete, and Good Sports. They're turning a $50 donation into $200 worth of wrestling gear. So headgear, new wrestling shoes, and workout clothes. And hopefully some listeners out there feel compelled to go ahead and donate $50, and then that'll turn into $200 of gear for our athletes, which, as you know, starting them off strong and giving them that confidence and stepping onto the mat is going to be that first stepping block for their success later.
It's huge. And for anyone listening, quit being a cheapskate, get the wallet out, dust off the credit cards. And that's what I love about Beat the Streets. Whether it's Beat the Streets National, Beat the Streets Chicago, like, this money is going directly to the kids. Like these are organizations that are run by professionals. It's not a bunch of washed up wrestlers in a garage. Like these guys are legit. like Mike Powell in Chicago, Ben Ryder at Beat the Streets National. These are professionals who really know how to do this, and like the impact is insane. So, I really encourage anyone to support Beat the Streets, and Beat the Streets National is the overarching umbrella, and they're leading this charge. So we know how it is to show up in gym shoes to a tournament. You can't do it. You never wear down the shame. So no, I'm happy to talk about it. I really love what Ben's doing at Beat the Streets National. So you guys have just go to Beat the Streets National's website to donate?
So you can go to beatthestreets.org, and there's a bar at the top that has the Gear Up campaign, and you can click that and you can donate that way. But if you really want to support, a podcaster, or you want to support a wrestling wife, or there's 29 teams. So there's 29 people you can support, right? And you can donate to that team. And again, it's just a fun way. They set a goal, and by the end of December, if they reach their goal, they get a Beat the Street shirt, they get shout outs on Twitter, they get bragging rights. Really, my biggest thing about Beat the Streets is the community, the wrestling community, right? I want these kids, our youth, to know that it's not just their coaches in their corner, it's the entire wrestling community in their corner.
Yeah.
And so I want to build that community out. by having these mini competitions, right? And then to show these kids, it wasn't just Beat the Streets National and your coaches raising these funds. It was literally every single wrestling community, every single wrestling fan, fanatic, coaches, like it's a community, and you're a part of that community.
We got to get a Wrestling Change My Life team going, because I want to put the smoke on Allison Schwab, because I saw her putting up some numbers, and I love Allison, so we got to give her a little competition.
Yeah, she calls people out. I was a little afraid of her. I'm glad I'm not competing against her, but I will tell you, Lindsay Beasley, her husband George Mason, right? Yep. So Frank Beasley's wife, right? Yep. She's the one. She snuck in there.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in second place right now.
Well, I'm gonna get a team spun up. I know you messaged me about it prior, so we'll definitely get that going, and we'll put links to the Gear Up campaign in the show notes. And yeah, I think it's just awesome. I love when people are all in on wrestling, and obviously that's you too. And it's just it's exciting to see what the future has in store. Any last words before we sign off, Perry family?
Thank you for this opportunity for us to share our story and share the Beat the Streets Nationals Gear Up campaign. We appreciate you for that.
Yeah, we always just give a big shout out and a big thank you to the wrestling community. We know that everything you guys did for us and everything you guys continue to do for us and our family and support us, and we're gonna pay it forward. That's our plan.
Sure.
Awesome. I know I have some takeaways from this. We'll get Joe Russell on, and I got to hunt down whoever hands out those sweatshirts, because that PRTC
just so people can see.
There it is. Brandon Slay, you've been notified.
On notice.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, too. Take it
care.
easy.